Welcome back, America, and history nerds everywhere, to another episode of Kleppers Corner, Today in History, where we take one date and discover it's basically a season finale, a series premiere, and a mid-season cliffhanger all rolled into one. September 2nd isn't just a date. It's history's all-you-can-eat buffet. You've got war endings, revolution beginnings, giant fires, the U.S. Treasury, Tibetan exile democracy, Keanu Reeves, Selma Hayek, and J.R.R. Tolkien all on the same day. Honestly, it's like history was overbooked on this date and just said, fine, everyone gets a slot. So buckle in, because September 2nd is where humanity sets things on fire, rebuilds it with bricks, ends a world war, starts a new one, and still finds time to let Alexander Hamilton scream, "I told you so," from the grave. Segment 1, the end of World War II and the beginning of Vietnam's war. September 2nd, 1945. The day the world said, war is over, and Vietnam said, actually, we're just getting started. In Tokyo Bay, Japan formally surrendered on the deck of the USS Missouri, a battleship chosen partly because it was Admiral Halsey's flagship, partly because it was named after Truman's home state, and mostly because USS Delaware just didn't have the same ring to it. The whole thing was staged like the Oscars. The big flag from Pearl Harbor was there. Commodore Perry's 1853 flag was hanging like an Easter egg, and they even brought Mount Fuji in as background scenery. The only thing missing was Ryan Seacrest asking MacArthur who he was wearing. Spoiler, khaki. Always khaki. MacArthur signed with a flourish, and the Japanese foreign minister, Mamoru Shigemitsu, showed up in a top hat and tails. Like he was there for a wedding, not the geopolitical equivalent of, sorry about Pearl Harbor, can we Venmo you? Meanwhile, in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh grabbed a microphone and declared independence from France. And he didn't just write a speech. He straight up plagiarized the U.S. Declaration of Independence. He said, all men are created equal, which is a bold move considering America was still segregating buses. It's like quoting someone else's Tinder profile in your wedding vows. Swipe left on colonialism. The U.S. should have been flattered, but instead they basically ghosted Ho Chi Minh, leaving him on red while France came storming back in. And boom, the first Indochina War was born. September 2nd, peace on one side of Asia, a 30-year nightmare on the other. It's like ordering dessert at one table while the table next to you bursts into flames. Segment 2, the Great Fire of London, when your baker burns down a city. Flashback to 1666, a year that already sounds like the devil's pin number. September 2nd, London catches fire. And not just a little fire, like, oops, left the oven on. This was the Michael Bay of fires. It started in the bakery of Thomas Farrinor on Pudding Lane. Yes, the King's Baker burned down the capital. Imagine your city being destroyed because somebody didn't set a kitchen timer. Farrinor escaped, but his poor assistant died. History's least lucky intern. The fire spread fast because London was basically built out of kindling. Timber houses, pitch coating, straw roofs, narrow streets. It was like an urban bonfire waiting for a match. And the match was a croissant. Samuel Pepys, history's nosiest diarist, wrote down everything, including him burying his Parmesan cheese in the yard to save it from the flames. Which is relatable. If my city were on fire, I'd save the cheese too. Meanwhile, the Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, saw the flames and famously said, a woman might piss it out. Sir, the Thames couldn't piss this out. This is why politicians shouldn't moonlight as Yelp reviewers. The fire destroyed 4/5 of the city, including St. Paul's Cathedral. But out of the ashes came progress. Christopher Wren tried to redesign London like Paris, with boulevards and piazzas. Instead, lawyers and landlords said, nah, just rebuild the same streets, but this time use bricks. And thus, modern building codes were born. London traded jettied houses for standardized, boring brick boxes. Progress isn't sexy, but it doesn't burn down as often. Segment 3, the U.S. Treasury is born. Hamilton gets his playground. Fast forward to 1789, September 2nd. George Washington signs the act creating the U.S. Treasury. Because after the Revolution, America's financial situation made your student loans look manageable. Debt was through the roof. The Continental Congress had been printing money like it was monopoly cash. Inflation was so bad, you could pay for dinner with a wheelbarrow of IOUs. So Washington tapped Alexander Hamilton as the first Treasury Secretary, which is like putting the kid who always wins Monopoly in charge of your real estate portfolio. Hamilton's plan? Assume state debts, tax whiskey, and create a national bank. Jefferson hated it. Madison hated it. Farmers really hated it because no one likes a tax on their moonshine. That little disagreement led to America's first political parties, the Federalists versus the Democratic Republicans, Hamilton versus Jefferson, or as I call it, the original rap battle. The Treasury stabilized the nation's finances, but it also created centuries of fights about taxes, debt, and whether the government should be allowed to tell you how to spend your money. Basically, Hamilton wrote the script for every fiscal cliff drama since. And he did it while still finding time to cheat on his wife and write angry pamphlets about it. That's multitasking. Segment 4, Transitions to Sovereignty, India and Tibet. September 2nd is also a day for new governments. In 1946, India's interim government formed, led by Nehru, as the British slowly packed their bags and pretended partition wasn't going to be a complete disaster. The interim government was basically India's training wheels, steering a massive, diverse country toward independence without falling into the ditch of civil war. Spoiler, it didn't go smoothly. Then in 1960, Tibet in Exile held its first parliamentary elections in Dharamshala, India. Imagine losing your homeland to China, but instead of giving up, you say, fine, we'll just invent a government here. The Tibetan parliament in exile became a symbol of survival. Tibetans call September 2nd Democracy Day, which is both inspiring and kind of depressing when you realize their democracy exists because they can't go home. It's a reminder that sometimes governments are born out of triumph and sometimes they're born out of trauma. Either way, somebody's still arguing about taxes. Segment 5, Legacies, Births, and Deaths. Finally, September 2nd is crowded with personal milestones. Ho Chi Minh died on September 2nd, 1969, the anniversary of the very independence he declared. That's commitment to your personal brand. Meanwhile, J.R.R. Tolkien died in 1973, taking the elves, dwarves, and one very overworked ring with him. Without him, we wouldn't have Lord of the Rings, and Peter Jackson would have just been some guy in New Zealand filming sheep. On the birth side, Krista McAuliffe, the teacher turned astronaut whose tragic Challenger mission still inspires educators today. Keanu Reeves, born 1964, the nicest man on the internet, proving that sometimes humanity gets it right. And Selma Hayek, born 1966, who fought her way into Hollywood and changed the game for Latin American representation. Not bad for one day on the calendar. So, what's September 2nd? It's the day the world ended a war, started another, learned the importance of fire codes, invented the Treasury, birthed new nations, exiled a parliament, buried revolutionaries, lost a mythmaker, and gave us Keanu Reeves. Honestly, it's exhausting. If history were a Netflix series, September 2nd is the season finale where everyone dies. A spin-off launches, and the producers still manage to sneak in a birthday party for Keanu Reeves. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is September 2nd, where endings and beginnings collide, and where we all learn one timeless truth. Never trust a baker named Thomas Farinor.